I'm going to show you how to make a template group in Aruba Central. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to move two switches into this new template group. Then we are going to import a base configuration and save it as a template. What we'll show next is we will make a couple VLANs, we'll make 3 VLANs, and we'll make sure that they get pushed out to the two switches in the template group. So I want to show that if you just, without using variables, if you just add some configuration into the template, it will push out to all the switches in the group. The next thing we want to do is we want to show how we could use a variable and push one or two unique VLANs to one switch in the group. Now, we could have 100 switches in the group, and they would all get the basic configuration that we configure in the template group, but we only want this one switch to have a unique configuration on it. So let me show you how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is going to click on Organizations. We're going to go down and we are going to create a new template group. So let's click on the plus sign and let's make sure that the box is checked for a template. And we are going to just call this, GoPro group. We have to put a password. Oh, don't match. So this password will be used for SSHing into the switches in the group. So let me go down here to, I'm going to move my two switches that have a factory default configuration on them. I'm going to move the first one in, and I had them in another group before, but I'm going to move them into this new group that we just created. So you can see that there are now two switches. The TG means it's a template group. We're going to click on Config. We're now going to go to our switches. You can see both of the switches are up. We're going to go to the configuration gear up in the right hand corner. And as you can see right now, we're on the templates tab, and there are no templates in here. So what we want to do is we're just going to call this one template. And we could lock it down to a certain model, but I'm not going to. And what I'm going to do is just select one of the switches. You can see there was 2 in the drop-down list. If I had 10 switches in here, they would show up in the drop-down list. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to import the template. And here is a default template. And you can see it only has VLAN 1. This is just the default configuration that's coming in from the switch. And we're going to click Save. Now, what we want to do, I know this is just a very simple base configuration, but we want to click on Configuration Audit, and we want to make sure that we don't have any errors. So sometimes it shows up here as pending, failed or pending, but we should be able to refresh, and that should clear up. Yep, so it all cleared up. So we don't have any issues. That's working, but that's just a very base config. So if we do a show VLAN, you can see these are my two switches that are in the group, and all they have is the default VLAN 1. So I am going to show you first how to use just a base template and make changes that can push out to all the switches, and then I'm going to show you how to use a variable. So let's go in and let's click on the pencil to edit. And what we can do is if we want to add a couple VLANs, we can come in here and we can go and we can say, so we can do VLAN 10. Then you tab in and we can do name, and then we could do video. And then we could do, so we should type exit. Then we'll go back and do VLAN 12, tab, name. We'll just call it voice. And I'm not putting any, I'm just making a simple layer 2 VLAN. I could put IP addresses under there if I wanted to. And then I'll do VLAN 14, and we'll just tab in and call it printers. So we just want to show how we can push out 3 VLANs here to both switches in the group. And it wouldn't matter if I had 100 switches in this group, it should create all 3 of these VLANs. So let's click Save. What we'll want to do is we'll want to check our configuration, and it says 0 issues. So let's go up here and do Show VLAN, and you can see it created the 3 VLANs that we just created on that switch, and Show VLAN, and it created the VLANs on this switch. So what we want to do now is one of the switches I want to go in and I want to make a unique VLAN just on that switch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the templates, and well, let's first upload a variable file. We can edit a variable file. Right now you can see that this variable file is default. And you can see the serial numbers for the 2 different switches. So I have 2 switches, one ends in 8C and one ends in 8F. And this is just the default variable. So I could click on the pencil and change the IP address, or here I could change the net mask. So if I want to go in, I want to change the host name, I can click on the pencil here, and then I'll just click Save at the bottom. So this is just the default variables that are built into it. But if we want to change around the variables, what we can do is click on JSON. Now you can use CSV if you're comfortable with using Excel. I like using JSON. I just like the way it lays everything out in this visual editing program that I have that was free. So I'm going to make sure JSON is highlighted, and I am going to download this variable file. So let's make a new folder. We'll call it GoPro, because that's what we called our group. And we'll call this GoPro base variables. So we'll click Save, and here comes the file down. Now when we open this file up, let me show you. I have some others open here, but let me open this up and we'll show you. So File, Open. If I go up here and do GoPro and Base, so you can see now on this tab we're on this base file. So the variables, I didn't have to create any of this. Just by adding the switches into the group, it automatically creates this. And now if I want to edit just one of these switches, I want to edit the one with 8C. So I'm not even sure which switch that is. Let's do a show system, and let's take a look at, yep, so this top switch is my 8C switch. So I'm going to make changes to this switch. I want to add a few more VLANs in here. So what we're going to do is here's a file I was working with before. I'm going to create 2 VLANs. They're VLAN 50 and 51. And I'm going to add it in just for this switch. So you can see this bottom one does not have these 2 variables for VLANs A and B. So I can copy this because I was just working on that before. Now you can see here in each section for each switch, after each one of these variables, you can see there's a comma. Well, here there is not a comma, or there is not supposed to be a comma on the last line of this section here. But since I'm going to add to it, I need to put a comma. And then I'm going to paste in my config here. And notice I don't have a comma at the end of here because that's my last in the section. So let's give this a new name now. We'll call it, we'll save it as GoPro, and instead of base, because it's not my base config, it says, let's call it just add it to VLANs. So we'll save that. So this is my variable file. So what we'll do is we will now make sure that JSON is selected. I'm going to click on Upload Variable Files. I'm going to go to this Go Profile folder, and I'm going to add my new variable file. So it says variable file uploaded successfully. If I click the templates and click back here to variables, you're going to see that it's going to add in some variables for me once I upload them here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the switch template, and I'm going to edit it. So what I want to do is I am going to now, just so I didn't have to type it up, here's our 3 VLANs that we added earlier to this default config. So now I want to add these additional VLANs. So this is my if statements that are going into my template. So let me copy these. Now I made this earlier just so I didn't have to type it up, and you can take a look at what's in here. Right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to add that in here. So if I click on here and paste it in, you can see that I added this section in. So what this is saying is, if the variable exists, VLAN A, then add it to the configuration of the switch and add it with all these parameters. You can add the name and everything in here and what ports are tagged. We could even put an IP address. And same with VLAN B. So I'm going to click Save. I'm going to check my configuration audit to make sure that I'm not having any issues, and it looks good so far. I'll refresh it again just to make sure that when I push that out there aren't any issues. So that looks good. So if I now go in and I'm looking here at my switches, you can see for VLAN A, when I uploaded that variable file before, it said it's adding 50 and 51 just to this switch, okay? The 8C switch. Now if you go down the 8F, you can see it does not have 50 and 51. So that's because I added it in this variable file. So let's go into our 2 switches and see what VLANs we have. So this top switch should have the extra VLANs 50 and 51, and it does. And this bottom switch does not have it. So this is my one-off switch that I can have these extra 2 VLANs in. If I added multiple switches into this group, they would just get this same default config, right? They would not get any of these variables, but they would get VLANs 10, 12, and 14. So now what if I wanted to get rid of that? What if we decided after a few months that we no longer need it? Let's say we no longer need VLAN 50. So what I would do is go in and I'm going to close this, and let me just show you how we can do it again. So that variable file is loaded into Aruba Central. Now if I want to download it again and edit it, say we want to get rid of VLAN 51 on my top switch, we'll click on this download button. Let's save this variable file. Let's just call it GoPro. And let's just, I don't know, I'm just going to give it a bunch of explanation points for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to open that up. So file, open file, and I'm going to open this, and here we are. This is, you know, I had it already in my editor and I could have just gone back and edited the file and saved it, but I wanted to show you how to download the file again. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to get rid of these couple VLANs, 51. So say these are no longer needed, we're going to delete those. And you see that little red underline here that there's an error, and that's because it's the last one in the group and we do not need that comma there. So I can now save this. I can say file save as. I mean, I could have just kept the same name, you know, GoPro, but I'll change it just to show you. I'm going to now call this GoPro, remove VLAN 51. So I save that. I can even close this editor if I want. And what I'll do is I'll now upload the variable file. And let's call it GoPro remove 51. So now VLAN 51 should be all gone. We can look at our templates. It's still asking in the template if VLAN B exists, but now we got rid of that, right? It's no longer there when we only have A. So that should remove it from the switch. So if we take a look at our top switch, because this is where we had 51, if we do a show VLAN, whoops, sorry, wrong switch. If we do show VLAN, 51 is gone. So I just wanted to show you how to use a base template just to push out a bunch of VLANs to multiple switches. And I wanted to show you how to use a variable file for that one-off switch or that one-off device that may have a unique config.